Um, okay, I guess I'm looking for perhaps a humorous picture or a hint. Um, much of my time is just passing by without being present. And you said before, when presence arises from the formless, that is nothing that we do. So it's some kind of need from there or grace or whatever. On the other hand, I found being in intense situations, being faced with difficulties or with beauty, it works quite often. But then there are many times when I'm just busy with little things or dealing with people, I'm just unconscious. Is it just something I have to wait for then, or just have to be patient? Nothing I can do, so to speak?
That is the challenge that everybody faces, that as presence arises, the arising presence will be challenged by the human mind. Both from within you, we could call that your mind. Ultimately, the human mind is the human mind. But let's just call it your mind. It will be challenged by your mind in cooperation with your pain body. The arising presence will also be challenged by other human minds, people around you, situations around you, because this structures, the human-made structures of our world, social, economic, political, work structures, they are all made by the unenlightened human mind, the egoic mind. So work situations, the way people do things, all those pre-existing structures are created by the madness, ultimately. So you are moving in external structures created by the human mind, and you are meeting in those mind structures with other human minds. For example, if you're a teacher, many schools these days are quite mad places. And to be a teacher is extremely stressful. Even hospitals, if you're a nurse or a doctor, again, many hospitals are quite mad places. Potentially, they could be great places of healing or regeneration, but they are people running around. And it's a miracle that healing still happens, and it happens sometimes despite the mind. Some of it comes through the nurses that still bring some presence without knowing it, or perhaps nurses have been coming here too, and doctors. So they bring something to balance the madness that is there. So almost any situation that you move into, you will still encounter the agitated human mind coming at you, if not from within you, from without. And so that's the great challenge, whether you teach at a school or work in a hospital or work in a corporation or work for social services, helping people, and everybody's unhappy and everybody's complaining, and you go to committee meetings and there's continuous arguments and position taking and disagreement, all these things that make up the egoic mind. And your challenge is to bring presence to that situation. But the human mind will want to draw you in, and its pull can be quite strong. Come and join us in our madness, it says. And the pull is there. And the pain body can be very active too in those situations. And the pain body is saying, come, be as unhappy as we are. And so this is how presence deepens. It's through the challenges of living in this world that presence deepens. And then one day you find yourself being in the same conflict situation and simply being there as a spacious presence, not a reactive entity. And you watch what people are saying. You look, watch. Not thinking they should be more sane, they should behave differently, they shouldn't be so unconscious and selfish and greedy and power hungry. What you're looking at is simply the the human condition. Compassion comes, but really there's spacious presence, but it needs to be intense. And then nothing else is needed but to hold the non-reactive space of presence, which of course doesn't involve effort. There's an intensity to it. There is even a fierceness to it. You cannot explain through words the qualities of presence. In one sense, one can say it has no qualities because it has all qualities. But there is a fierceness to presence, particularly in challenging situations. Remember the sword, what I call the sword of presence. The fierceness that you can see when you look at old paintings of Zen masters. There is a look that is almost frightening in its fierceness, with bulging eyes. They are challenging, very challenging to encounter. That's the fierce aspect of presence. Underneath it, there's a softness, a gentleness. And sometimes the fierceness is necessary, where there's just an intensity of... The fierceness is not fighting anything, it's just there. And that, any situation that you bring that into, hang on to your body if necessary, to the inner body, while you're there, and to be deeply, really rooted here. And then you watch. And that is enough to change the situation. Not that you even want to change the situation, then you're creating some future again. The presence that arises is not a means towards changing the situation. You give up the desire or the need to change the situation, because that also is a need for something to be different from the way it is. It's a psychological need for future. So in any situation that is full of conflict, full of unhappiness, full of problems, even also healing situations where a person comes to you for advice or healing, not believing that you need to change this situation. You need to improve this situation. And then you make presence into a means to an end, and it's not presence anymore. You're trying to achieve something through being present. Presence is enough in itself, and whatever is needed to change the situation comes out of presence without prior intention that says, this is what I'm going to do in this situation. And you find yourself, the doing happens. And sometimes no doing happens, and something changes in the energy field around you. Something changes around the conference table. Something changes in the family where they're having dinner in the kitchen at the table and everybody is shouting, and suddenly the mother or the father holds presence, and the shift comes. Invariably, things change when you no longer demand, because that is an important part of the arising presence, you no longer demand that this situation should be different, because it isn't. It is as it is. And only through the recognition of is as is does presence arise. And that is the miracle. When the need for it to be different goes, then it changes. Because presence always means yes. And that yes will have to very often be a yes to whatever stage humans are at in their present evolution, which is called extreme dysfunction. But it's not that you're saying, I say yes to extreme dysfunction. No, that's a mental stuff again. There's simply a yes to what is. You're not condemning any of these people that are participating in the drama and thinking they should know better. They should be enlightened. They shouldn't be so unconscious. They shouldn't be like that and like that and like that. They are as they are, and there's nothing personal to it. It is simply a manifestation of human consciousness or unconsciousness. So that's simply be there as the space in which it happens. Then healing happens, transformation happens. Sometimes words come out of your mouth, you contribute something to the situation, but the words that come have a different energy quality to them than before. They have a power. You may not say anything. Somebody else may suddenly wake up and say something that is, for the first time, something deep and true that is not designed to create more conflict. And so that's when you've realized for the first time the most agitated people very often wake up when you are there as spacious presence. And this happened to me. At first I was astonished when it happened several times when agitated people came to me and said, you must do something about this needs to be done, look at these papers, this is a dreadful problem, this is fear. And it's just presence. And with one person, she suddenly dropped all her papers and said, this isn't important, is it? And then she said, there's only love, isn't there? So yes. Nothing was needed, no doing was necessary, just that. Beautiful. Well, the clock says 6:20. It's now, of course. Several people have given me watches that have, wherever the numbers are, it says now, now, now. And they're always accurate. Let's enter stillness. So it seems that time moves on. Every experience first it's only a thought form, retreat in Italy. For some people it never became a reality, it remained a thought form, they never turned up. And they're still thinking, should I have gone? And some are beating themselves up. I didn't go, I missed it again. I should have, I had booked and then I cancelled, how stupid. So it remained the thought form, future. For others, those who are here, the thought form seem to get closer. Future thought. Thought form is future is a thought form. And then it seemed to get closer, it didn't get closer, it's just a perspective. And then suddenly it opens up, it's the now, it actually is, it's here, and then And then it's a thought form again, a memory, supported perhaps by some photos. Or even moving images on the screen, see video, who knows. But it's gone. And so it seems the express train of time never really stops. And you see the landscape, it's coming. So that's every experience fleeting. And you may find the same when you reach the end of this lifetime. A collection of experiences that went by quickly, and then your entire life. Was that it? Maybe it was a dream. The dreamlike quality, we talked about it, of something that has moved into past. So time, we seem to be trapped in it. And now time is dragging us along. We can't stay here. Time is dragging us away from here. No, I want to stay here. But that whole idea of time is only thought, both future and past. And although the experience of this gathering is fleeting and comes to an end, and seems like whenever any experience comes to an end, it's a little death, a little bit die. You die many times whenever something ends. It's not without reason that in many languages the word for goodbye includes the affirmation that we are going to meet again, to make that death a little easier. Because there seems to be something missing when you say goodbye. And not many people leave it like that, although in English that word itself doesn't have the notion that it's... Usually in English you then add, see you soon, see you next year, see you at the next retreat. Other languages you don't have to add that because au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, and so on, they already have that idea built in, see you again, which means goodbye. So it makes the death a little easier, and there's the promise of future, another event in the future, a rebirth. We can have a similar experience again. But this is not what I'm promising you here. I'm not saying, don't worry, we are going to have another retreat. We may, but when that comes, it'll be the same as this. A thought form, it's here and it's gone. And then there we are again. So the experience comes to an end, but as an experience, this wasn't a great thing anyway. As an experience, it could have been much more exciting, with all kinds of very exciting things happening there. Well, maybe for one or two of you something exciting did happen. I won't inquire. But probably for most, as an experience, there wasn't that much in it. Not that much happening, just beautiful, but not that much happening in it. And that wasn't the purpose of this gathering, to fill it up with some kind of content. Some content is inevitable. The words are content, the sense perceptions are content, but as content goes, you've probably had more exciting experiences where there was more content. So on the level of content, this was okay. And that is the experience, the content of it, the form that it takes, ends. But the real reason for us meeting here was to point to something else, to that which is beyond content. Both content, the external content of your life, which we could call the life situation, and beyond the inner content of your life, thought forms, emotional forms, the stream of thinking, the emotional fluctuations, including the pain body. To see that which is before content and after content arise, after it comes and goes. It's born and dies. This experience was born and then it dies. Now it's dying. That's beautiful too. So the entire gathering was pointing to another dimension that is even beyond an experience as such, because experience implies that it comes and goes. It has a beginning and an end. And it exists in time. Beginning, end. And then you see that anything to do with content, external or internal, has a certain lifespan. It's fleeting. Everything. And because it's so fleeting, it has a dreamlike quality. Again, there's something in Shakespeare somewhere. We are the stuff dreams are made of, or something like that. A dreamlike quality to one's life because of the fleetingness of everything. And so we see that which already, of course, the Buddha pointed to as one of the characteristics of existence is impermanence. And to see that in a strange way is already a kind of liberation. Even just to recognize how impermanent all experiences are, how can you recognize it? If everything were of the same color in this world, yellow or green, every object, whatever you look upon, then obviously that color wouldn't exist because you have nothing to differentiate it from. If everything were yellow, there would be no yellow. You wouldn't recognize yellow because everything is yellow. If everything were impermanent, one could say, perhaps, even the recognition of impermanence would not be possible. To see it means that there is something that is beyond the fleetingness of all phenomena. And when you see how fleeting it is, that seeing arises out of the unconditioned, timeless consciousness, presence, space consciousness. From there, you see the world of form. It is not judged. You take no perspective, position, standpoint, reaction. It's simply seen. The moment it becomes a judgment and say, isn't it sad? We live in this dreadful place where everything is turning to ashes. It's already turning to ashes even at this moment. Every object, every body, we just don't see it right there. But if we saw a speeded up version of this room, 2,000 years compressed into 1 minute, everything would be turning to ashes. And that would be an amazing spiritual realization if you could see here. Let's imagine a film is speeding up. Let's say 4,000 years, which is very little on a planetary or cosmic scale. 4,000 years here, nobody's interfering with what's happening, compressed into 1 minute, and then you see it on a film, and then what you would see, first of all, the bodies sitting here, they would shrink, get old, and wrinkled, and suddenly dissolve. The flesh melts, bones remain for a little while, and they also crumble. And then the wood would go, and even metal would get rusty and then dissolve. And then after that minute, just maybe a little bit of dust, and then a gust of wind comes, and it's all gone in 1 minute. And you're watching. That watching, in which no judgment arises, a simple seeing, is the witnessing presence, is the space in which all phenomena come and go. And that is the essential nature of yourself. When it looks from an external viewpoint as if you were dragged away from here by time. You can't get out of time, so this comes to an end, you have to leave. But really, when you go here, all that happens is the space of now, which is the space of aware presence, which is the space consciousness. All that happens is that some other forms, some other experiences appear in the space of now, your field of awareness. For example, a train appears. The body moves. Then it sits on the train and goes landscape. And then maybe an airport appears. And then the vision of the inside of an aeroplane appears. and then another airport appears. Space. And there remains, things appear and disappear in the field of awareness. That's all. Now it has, one thinks of that as I am going there and then I'm going there. Ultimately, on a deeper level, you're not going anywhere. The scenery changes, the hologram changes, the holodeck for Star Trek enthusiasts. It's like forms appear for a moment. And then if even at any moment you could close your eyes and then the visual dimension disappears, except the memory traces. You could sit on an aeroplane, close your eyes, then a huge amount of content disappears unless it's replaced immediately by thought. You close your eyes and then there's just a dark space, and then there's auditory perceptions left. If they also disappeared, there would be some touch, but let's say that goes too, then simply there's a deep, vast space. There is something there and yet nothing there. You, in your essence, would be there, the I amness. And so it's that to see that the changing phenomena, they happen within an unchanging space. And most humans are totally unaware of the unchanging space, which I sometimes call, because then people can, it's a useful perspective, which I sometimes call the space of now. People are unaware of the space of now. All they know is the content of now. What happens? Because the content changes all the time, people believe that every day consists of many nows, many moments. Every hour seems to consist of many moments. If you look more deeply, you realize there are no many moments. Your life consists of the one unchanging now moment. It is never not the now, this. So it's an illusion to think that my life consists of many moments. We are mistaking the form that the now takes for the essence, the space of now. That's why it seems that there are many moments in one's life, whereas there's only one moment. That also brings out the delusion of time, ultimately a delusion, which is connected with the workings of your thought processes. And there it has its place. But you don't need a lot of philosophical ability, first of all, to see. Perhaps even maybe a 10-year-old could see it more clearly than an adult who is trying to figure out what this means. There's nothing much to figure out except to see that it's always now. This is self-evident, that nothing ever happens, nothing ever is experienced, felt, even thought. You can think about the future, but you have to be thinking it now. You cannot do anything. You can't. Life and now, you and now are not inseparable. It always is this. Then the form of now, of course, changes. Here we have this form, this room, a body sitting here, words coming out of the mouth. ears perceiving the words, the space of this room, the bodies filling this room. The space of this room, when you become aware of that, that already takes you beyond identification with content. But here, the content is this, and in a few hours it may be something totally different. The space of now will have different content to it, as I just described. Comes, goes. So, usually all that people know and are aware of and are identified with is the content of now. And as such, it never lasts very long. Like this experience, the content is this, the external form of our retreat coming to an end. The content is about to disappear from the field of now. All the forms. Then there may be left mental content, memories of this event. They could linger for longer, but it's no longer the actual reality. But even those things you can only think in the field of now. Those thoughts come up in the field of now. It is possible that while you're sitting on an aeroplane, the field, the space of now may be filled primarily with memories of this event rather than the sense perceptions of that moment. So, sense perceptions and thoughts and emotions fill up the space of now. And most people, that's people's lives. That's what people see as my life. It's the content of my life. And there's something not that satisfying about it because of the short-lived nature of all those content things. And I called that, at the beginning of our retreat, I used the expression object consciousness for that. To be only conscious of content, not conscious of space in which it happens. In other words, to be only conscious of the content of now, but not of the now, which is the space. Space consciousness arises when there is a sudden awareness of this, the underlying field which defies, which cannot be really put into words, because every word is content again. So we are using words and thoughts to point to something that cannot possibly be understood through words or thoughts. So one could say it's an impossibility for us to understand what these words point to. And the reason why we are here is not to understand that. Don't even try. The words, the purpose of the words is simply to point there. So I can say, there is that which happens, and there is that which enables it to happen. The space, sometimes described as stillness. But no word is totally adequate. And I suggest to you, I've been suggesting this, to know for yourself this so intangible thing that people spend a lifetime in a Zen monastery trying to get it, and often don't. But now it's getting easier. That I suggested that that little portals appear in your life through which that dimension can be realized. One is silence, because it's the absence of content. To acknowledge the absence of content, that which corresponds to that inside you can acknowledge that, nothing else. Silence, no content. So you listen to it, you notice it, and suddenly the noticing is the arising of no content in your mind, until a thought comes in that says, oh, it's very silent. That may come in after 3 seconds. That's okay. It may come in after 2 seconds. It's okay, but there were 2 seconds of no content. The first moment of listening to the silence, which is listening to nothing. And that is not significant from the point of view of content, but it is deeply significant because something is arising, a dimension of consciousness that is unconditioned, that in which there is nothing is born or dies because there's no form in it. The formless, unconditioned dimension that is the essence of who you are. And that in such a seemingly insignificant thing as noticing silence, if only for a few seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, that is arising. It's then immediately perhaps covered up again by content, because a thought comes in that says, why can't you listen to it for longer? And then perhaps again the attention goes, and there's a listening again. And during that moment of listening, there's a little space in which there's not a single thought. Because you cannot listen to silence through thought. Thought is mental noise. Thought knows nothing of silence. It is unaware of silence. To even have an awareness of silence as a dimension, even though there may be a few noises, as an underlying dimension, which is always there somewhere, the dimension of silence is there, here very much so. To even be aware that silence exists requires you to be without thought for an instant. Oh. And it, in many cases, it is only an opening, and that is the same opening that I suggested to you when you first look at something, sense perception. It comes into your field of vision, it arises in the space of now. When you first look at something, in that first perception, there is a spaciousness in which you have not had time yet to formulate a thought about it, to call it something, to label it. So when I turn my head and look at this, for the first second or two, there is simply the looking. It's actually longer than a second or two. And if you could truly see that, you would be amazed. Truly see means stay with the spaciousness in which the labels don't arise. That comes. Don't demand that as I should be seeing it without. It's enough to notice that in the first moment The perception arises in a field of stillness. That's all. That field of stillness most people are totally unaware of, as a deeper dimension within themselves. Words are limited. It's within and without. Let's call it within. As a deeper dimension within themselves. Unaware of that, so unaware of space consciousness. And so the liberation is the liberation from the world of form, the world of content. Seeking yourself there somewhere in some content, mental form of me, it's the same. So just capturing, noticing the moment of stillness that is there when you first look. It doesn't have to be nature, it could be anything. Nature has a lot of stillness already in there. Some man-made things have a nervousness built into them, but nevertheless, in the first moment, there's always the clear perception. And when you notice it, it is possible that it may be there for longer, the space. If not, it doesn't matter. It's there. Yes, please. No.
The more I try to bring this space into my life, I've noticed that I face a lot of fear. I perceive layers of my personality, and I can get a small distance, and I get closer and closer, and there is this huge fear. And I wish if you could talk about this fear. I feel that I want something wonderful to happen to me, but for this to happen, I cannot be there.
Yes.
And there is the fear of death or whatever.
Yes, thank you. That's an important point. And you are not the only one who feels that. And the fear is the fear of the mind-made entity, the self, because in that it seems to disappear. And it's, no, it doesn't want to disappear. And so, what do you do with the fear? All you can do is also notice it as a feeling, a movement.